You're listening to the Fort Erie Podcast, your local source for upcoming events, hot new listings, and bite-sized interviews with business and community leaders. Here's your host, Brent Jones.
Good morning, Fort Erie. You're listening to Season 3, Episode 5 of the Fort Erie Podcast. It is Tuesday, November 10th, 2020, and I'm your host, Brent Jones. And today, my guest will be Barber Mike Daigle. Barber Mike the Barber, owner of Mike's Hair Studio, a new barbering studio in the north end of Fort Erie. Also the owner and operator of Bridgeburg Gentleman's Shop, which carries all sorts of men's grooming products. But first, let's talk about what's making news in Fort Erie this week. First, the E.J. Freeland Center in Fort Erie, formerly home to the Niagara YMCA, had its official reopening and ribbon-cutting ceremony this past Sunday, also commemorating the 60th anniversary of its newest operators, the Boys and Girls Club of Niagara. Mayor Wayne Reddekopp was quoted in Niagara this week as saying, "What we have here today is beyond what we had the day before it closed. It's now, again, a focal point of our community." Next, the town of Fort Erie has selected some local contractors to move forward with two town projects, the first being the replacement of a water main on Smith Street, and the second being a series of renovations at Town Hall to accommodate 3 new staff members coming over from the Economic Development Office, which is currently located off-site on Garrison Road. Lastly, the proposed Compass Heights development, which would result in the construction of 200 condo units and a 12-story mixed-use high-rise building at the former location of Keystone Kelly's, that's near the intersection of Central Avenue and Garrison Road, has received the green light to move on to the next stage of the approval process. For more details on this story or any story I've talked about today, please be sure to check out the show notes below this episode. Okay, for this week's hot new listing, I've chosen a property listed by Mark Saxton at Revel Realty. I'm talking about his newest listing, just listed yesterday at 1341 Lakehurst Avenue in Fort Erie. This property features plenty of updates and renovations throughout, 4 bedrooms, 3 bathrooms, and more than 2,300 square feet of living space. It's listed at $550. Please check out the link in the show notes below this episode for more information. Now, let's see what's on your minds this week, Fort Erie. This week in the Fort Erie Questions and Answers Facebook group, Summer asks, is the beer store only accepting empties on certain days? The correct answer is no. You can return your empties all days now, anytime you like, while the beer store is open. Kathleen asks, is there anywhere taking donations such as clothes? The 2 most common answers that I saw, yes answers, were the Crystal Ridge Dream Center will take almost any donations you have, as well as Salvation Army on Wintemute Street in Fort Erie. All right, that'll just about do it for local news this week, folks. Now on to my interview with Mike Daigle. All right, welcome back, Fort Erie. Joining me by phone right now is Mike Daigle, perhaps better known as Mike the Barber. Mike, welcome to the show. Well, I appreciate you making some time for me, and let me start this interview by asking the same question really I ask all my guests, which is, what makes Fort Erie such a great place to live and work?
I love Fort Erie because it's quiet. I grew up in Stevensville. I'm a small town boy, and as much as I love to see the development, it's very exciting. We do need it, but we still remain a quiet town, and everybody's just so easy to get along with. This is the place to be.
Yeah, and so you mentioned growing up in Stevensville. I mean, you've been really in the greater Fort Erie area your whole life, right?
My whole life.
Wow. And I know it's no secret. I think I've let the cat out of the bag on this episode already that, you're, of course, my barber. So I've had quite a number of years to get to know you. But I know through our conversations, you've done sort of a whole host of different things in your career. Why barbering now? That was a recent development in the last few years, right?
All started with the men's product at the Bridgeburg Gentleman's Shop, and then from there it kind of elevated. And I thought, well, you know what? I've tried everything else. I've always had courage to try something new. So I thought, well, let's give it a go. Despite my big personal space, I really didn't think I could do that close in kind of service. And then a very short time behind the chair, and people, loving the service they were getting, loving their cuts. The smile on their faces, their excitement. That was the capture. It's like, okay. How can I not do this? I seem to have a knack for it. And, you see the smile, the excitement, and that's the catch.
Wow.
That's what hooked me.
Well, that's cool. It's great to be able to find your passion. And I know you kind of represent two different brands because you've, of course, got the new hair studio, Mike's Hair Studio, and then Bridgeburg Gentleman's Shop, which kind of airs more on the side of physical products. And so you mentioned that the products came first. Like, how did you go through that process of deciding, not only what kind of barbering products were in demand, but how you sort of chose what vendors you wanted to work with? How did all that come together?
Actually started with a late night television commercial my wife saw for safety razors, and she was talking about how she used to use her father's safety razor. We thought it might be a good idea to make the switch ourselves to save money on blades. That was our original motivation. And then lo and behold, it turned out they switched to the single blade. It cured all my shaving discomfort woes, and I thought, wow, this is amazing. And that in concert with the wet shaving cream, which will provide much more glide, made it such a comfortable shave. I thought, well, I've gone from hating shaving 3 days a week to my sacred me time 5 to 7 days a week. And it's like, okay, if I've had this kind of evolution, the other people got to hear about this.
That's great.
So I started carrying the products.
That's very cool. Well, aside from just wet shaving, what other types of products do you carry, and how could people sort of buy or order these products from you?
Well, I really focus on the wet shaving and the hair products. It's the focus of my business. So obviously, wet shaving creams, shaving soaps, which you can apply, by hand or with a shaving brush. The soaps you need the brush for, of course. Safety razors, straight razors, and traditional shaving as well. The Mock-Free Infusion. So I cover all the bases there. And I also do free local delivery within Fort Erie.
Great. And I'll put links to those websites, in the show notes here below the episode. I certainly want to talk more about the service end of your business, but first it's time for the rapid fire question round, which I think you're familiar with. I'm going to rattle off a series of questions, fun things to get to know about Mike, and, so the listeners can get to know you a little bit better. Are you ready?
Well, we're at the end of my day. Let's see if I got some steam left.
All right. Well, let's start with an easy one, a yes or no. Are you a good dancer?
Not so easy. I'm going to say yes, but I don't dance in public.
Well, it's great to be a good dancer when you're not out in public, isn't it?
I'm a hell of a charmer in the bedroom. I can dance around the room when I'm getting changed, that's for sure.
If you could instantly become an expert in any one thing, what would it be?
Oh, boy, astrophysics.
Astrophysics, wow. All right, that's ambitious. What is your favorite color?
That's go with purple.
Purple, okay. What's your favorite time of day and why?
I like mornings. I love it when the sun comes up.
All right, Mike's a morning person. If extraterrestrials landed on Earth and offered to take you with them, would you go?
Oh, boy, I got to say yes.
Might as well go for the adventure, right? What is your favorite season of the year and why?
Oh, I like spring. I love the smell of the new blooms and everything. Just that new life. You're just watching everything green up. You can smell it. You can see it.
Nice. Me too. Well, great job, Mike. You survived the rapid fire question round.
All right.
I knew you could do it. I believed in you from the start. So, all right, let's talk about this. I mean, on the service end of the business, you left obviously a fairly large salon here in town this year to go solo.
Oh, well, that was during the COVID break here. I had spoken with my former employer several times over the last couple of years about maybe retiring and just taking it slow going from home. As you know, I've got a couple of back surgeries behind me here, so I have a bit of a pain problem. So I deal with that from day to day, and just a little too busy in the salon to keep up. So I thought it was time to do something at home and maybe quiet it down a little touch, make my own hours, and take it easy. And then after a month of sitting on our laurels with COVID, and they gave us the bad news, it was going to be some months yet before businesses were going to go back open. It seemed like that was an opportunity. It was now. So we got busy building the studio, and we started demolishing the basement probably near the end of April. And somehow we got the studio all set up, and we opened up for June 19th as the first call back into stage 2.
And it's beautiful too, the studio. For those of you listening who maybe are not familiar with Mike's Hair Studio, I mean, you of course run this out of your basement, but you've completely renovated. I mean, you've built a beautiful studio down there in the basement for your clients.
It has exceeded expectations. I was so worried right up to the last minute. It just wasn't seeming like it was in my head. It didn't seem like it was seeming when I was seeing in my vision. And all of a sudden, like, it was almost like the next day, it's like, oh wow, this turned out better than I was expecting.
Yeah, I bet. Now, of course, I know the answer to this question already, but for the benefit of people listening, tell me a bit about your prices. I mean, what are your prices like? How do they compare to, say, some of the big chains people might find around town?
Oh, actually have taken a bit of a price drop since I'm working at a home here. So I'm going to guess unless the prices have gone up at your normal value chains, I'm only $1.50 more than them.
Okay.
Most, if not all, my clients, consider me a premium service provider. So I think they're truly getting a deal here.
Wow. Okay. Well, I would agree with that for sure. Now, of course, like I said earlier, I'm going to put links in the comments to your websites. But what's the best way for somebody to book an appointment with you? Would that be through your website?
Everybody loves to do it online. They say the online bookings are very, very easy to use. Yeah.
Great.
And they can book online or right through my website or through Google products. Google Assistant will help you hook up an appointment in Google Maps, Google Search.
Nice.
And if you book through Google, then you can manage your appointment through Google Reservations or through my website. We will take it for every channel we can get. Yeah.
Well, that's very cool. And I learned something new because I didn't know you were integrated with Google like that. So that's very cool. Well, thanks so much, Mike. I mean, I really appreciate you spending some time with me today,
Oh, it's my pleasure.
Welcome back, everybody. It's time for another edition of
This Month in Fort Erie History, presented by HalfpennyDreadfuls.com.
Prominent family names continue to be recognized within the Fort Erie community and make up the history of Bertie Township. The following are a selection of land sales for the month of November, spanning from 1799 to 1853. November 2nd, 1799. John Powell sells 200 acres in Lot 6 and 7, Concession 4 to Hugh Gilmer for the sum of 100 British pounds. November 10th, 1801. David Cowan sells 250 acres of Lot 2, Concession 1 and 2 to Alexander Douglas for the sum of 100 British pounds. November 11th, 1853. Henry Zavitz sells 100 acres of land on Lot 2, Concession 12 to John Fritz for the sum of 500 British pounds. November 12th, 1846, Frederick Anger sells 33 acres of Lot 2, Concession 11 to William Anger for the sum of 300 British pounds.
I love those history bits, don't you? By the way, if you aren't familiar, check out the links in the show notes below this episode for more information on Mrs. Mooney's Halfpenny Dreadfuls, the pair that have provided very graciously these history clips for the past 2 seasons of the show. I've done a haunted history walk before with this pair of local historians. I've done that before and it was a whole lot of fun. Recommend you check out what they're up to. Now, to conclude today's episode, let's see what's going on so far as community events go. As a quick reminder, if you want me to give your upcoming community event a shout out on this show, visit theforteriepodcast.com and click the contact button at the top of the page to get in touch with me. Okay, let's see. The first event I want to cover is coming up tomorrow. That's Wednesday, November the 11th at 6 p.m. It is a Bar Blast workout session live via Zoom, courtesy of Yoga Essentials. To sign up for this, of course, you can check out the links in the show notes below this episode. Coming up on Friday the 13th, not such a scary day, Friday, November 13th, 5 p.m. until 6:30 p.m., the Fort Erie Lions Center is doing their baked ham fundraising dinner. This will, of course, be takeout due to COVID. And lastly, I wanted to mention that you can catch live music at the Crystal Chandelier this Saturday from 5 until 8 p.m., I believe it is. Check out, again, the links in the show notes below so that you can grab the phone number, book yourself a table. All right, I think that just about wraps up what's happening this week in our community. Please remember, everybody, take a moment of silence tomorrow in remembrance of our fallen heroes. Please wear a poppy. Please give generously to your local Legion. And please join me next week for a brand new episode of the Fort Erie Podcast. My guest will be Rob Ferragalli, owner of the Boho Studio in downtown Ridgeway, and of course an integral part of the Ridgeway BIA. So long for now, folks. Have a great week.
You've been listening to the Fort Erie Podcast with your host, Brent Jones, a sales representative with RE/MAX Niagara Realty Limited Brokerage. Follow @BuyWithBrent on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram for updates. Subscribe to the Fort Erie Podcast on popular platforms like Apple Podcasts and Spotify, and catch a new bite-sized episode every week. Until next time.